Welcome back to a new episode of Emerging Brands with Kelly Bennett podcast. I have a very special guest. This is someone I've been following on social and absolutely stopping the scroll to listen to their posts, listen to their advice. I listen to their podcasts. I am a big nerd for all the content coming from Alli Ball, the founder and CEO of Biz Wiz. Alli, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm really delighted to come on and talk about food businesses.
I'm really excited to talk about food businesses with you because I have some background. I was a partner of a restaurant. We had two locations, and I work with some food and beverage brands now. And I really admire how you build businesses and how you really leveraged your experience. Again, like I said, I've listened to your podcast so much. I know about your background. For anyone who's listening that's new, could you tell us a little bit of your backstory and how you started the business?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for asking. So I used to be head of grocery, a former grocery buyer, category manager at Buy Right Market here in San Francisco, where I still live. And this was way back when we had one single location, the original location on 18th Street. And my role was to find products for our shelves and make sure that they sold off of our shelves once we put them there. Sounds simple enough, right? And this was back when Buy Right was really known as a leader in our industry. In a way, we were incubating brands and really helping brands figure out what it took to succeed in wholesale. It means we were often the first account for brands, so they didn't know what they were doing. They were coming on our shelves, and we were really lenient with them and allowed them to make all the mistakes and support them as they figured it all out. And I did that for years and years. And Kelly, I loved it. I loved discovering that new brand at the farmer's market and putting them on our shelves. I loved going to the trade shows, like all of that. And then we decided to open a second market, Buy Right Divisadero. It's about 3 miles across town. And we started on that, gosh, probably 2010, 2011. It took us almost 3 years to open that market. Permitting is really challenging in San Francisco.
Wow.
And in that transition, I changed roles at Buy Right. I became head of grocery and store manager of that second location. And my role shifted from working with producers, helping, almost acting like an in-house consultant for Buy Right, helping small brands. And instead, I became totally in charge of this multi-million-dollar department. And I was heads down in the P&L week in and week out and looking at the financials of what it took to run this store. We did $35 million in sales in that first year alone out of 3,000 square feet
Wow.
store. So really, really high volume sales. And Kelly, I learned so many lessons as my role shifted there. But what I really learned was that I missed working with producers, and I missed helping. I missed helping brands understand what it took to actually succeed once they got to the shelf. And I realized that I could have far greater impact outside of the walls of Buy Right than I could in that 3,000 square foot store. So I left Buy Right. I left 9 years ago and started my business. And when I first left, I split my time consulting with retail stores across the country, helping with grocery buying operations and building category managers and helping people understand how to build successful grocery departments. And then half of my time working with producers, helping them again understand the world of wholesale. And slowly over time, Kelly, it's almost like always in hindsight, right? I'm like, oh, I left Buy Right so I wasn't working, so I didn't have to do that like heads down in grocery buying anymore. Like, what am I doing? Still doing all this consulting with retailers. And so slowly I transitioned more and more towards working only with producers on that sales strategy side of things. So yeah, 9 years ago, left Buy Right.
9 years ago. I was just reading your post. It was recently that you had that
this
9-year.
month.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And then, so when did you start Biz Wiz? When was that launched?
It's a great question. So when I first left Buy Right, I called my business Alli Ball Consulting. And I did that because people knew me in the industry. They
Right.
knew my name. They, I had a reputation, especially with buy rate. I really want to give buy rate so much credit here. I am where I am today because of that foundation that they gave to me. And so when I left with the business name as myself, right? I was like, I probably should have hired someone to help me on brand strategy there, but I called it Alli Ball Consulting and started it right away. Literally the month that I left Byright, I had my first paying clients.
Amazing.
And thank you. That was part of the plan. It was all, I'm definitely a planner. And so everybody knew I was leaving Byright. I was already like telling people, I had already had like the clients lined up and such. And it took a couple years, gosh, probably 3 years or so before I decided that I needed to stop going by my name and I needed to call
Mm,
it something else. And I had this realization, Kelly, when I think it came like hand in hand when I was growing beyond what I could manage as a solopreneur. I knew I had to build a team. I knew I had to bring people in. I knew if again, if we wanted to have this big impact that was the dream, I needed a team to support me in it. And I realized what was happening is we had clients who, maybe one of my like team members would give them advice on something, or my team member would reply with a workbook or template that they have. And people would say like, oh, no. Like, I want to talk to Alli, like, give me Alli's advice. And I found, Kelly, that like, of course, my team members were trained in all the same philosophies that I have in our industry. Of course, my team members have the same exact resources that I do on my Google Drive, right? But I found that I had really built a business that was centered around me as the brand. And I needed to start transitioning to being a company rather than just a personal brand. So we
right.
changed the business name to Biz Wiz. And I've seen the impact of that, Kelly. I've seen people trust in my team more now. I see that my team gets invited to, speak on panels and do things. And it's no longer like the Alli show all day, every day. Yeah.
That's really interesting, and I think it's a good case study for someone who does have a personal brand, who's like, "Is this the right choice for me?"
Yeah.
Or someone who's, on the cusp of trying to decide. Because I tell people too, like, I have a personal brand, but it fits for
Yeah.
what my goals are and how I wanna grow my business. But based off of what you just said, you wanted to scale outside of yourself. You wanted to build a
Yeah.
team. You also wanted to have it, um, clear of what you're known for. Even if an industry contact didn't know you directly, they would understand the scope of the business. So that
Exactly.
all
Exactly, Kelly.
aligns.
Yes. And I'll say, for the first 3+ years, a personal brand really worked for me. Right.
Mm.
That was great. And I have to tell you, it took a lot. It took a lot of self-reflection, honestly, some like coaching time to like
Oh,
realize
I'm
that it was
sure.
okay for me to move away from this identity as the only person in the company who could give the advice, the only person who could show up on social media, things like that. So we're not all the way there. I'll tell you, like, there are still things that say Alli Ball Consulting. My face is definitely still the primary face on our company's website and socials and stuff. But we're getting there. It's happening.
Well, I think that's really cool. And when you say that you've seen the impact from it as
Yeah.
far as trust from customers or clients listening and implementing what your team is also teaching them, I think that is, again, a great case study of the power of a name of a company to grow and scale the way that you really want to, and, envision the growth of it. Um,
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
love that.
Absolutely.
So
Thank you.
what you're welcome. What were a few things that, you set out to do differently, or some things that
Yeah.
you realize you now do differently within your industry?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the very first one was this idea that the wholesale buyer's perspective was missing in our industry. It
Mm,
is relatively easy, Kelly, to get advice from other founders or to hire a marketing director, or to speak with a branding agency, or even to like have a financial advisor, right? Like all of these things exist in our industry. But I found, especially 9 years ago, it was really, really hard to get that grocery buyer's perspective. So when I launched my business, that was my value proposition, right? I am different
Right.
because I am sharing the behind the scenes of what goes on in that grocery buyer's brain. And Kelly, here's why. Grocery buyers are really busy. They have a full-time job being a grocery buyer, and they don't have time. Even if they have the desire, they have very little time to actually work side by side with emerging brands, right? That's just not
Right.
built into the day-to-day of their job description. So it's really hard to find a grocery buyer who gives brands enough time to really help them understand, help them learn, help them grow. Okay, so that immediately was what I built this business off of. We need the perspective of the grocery buyer in this industry. So that was number one. And then once I started building out Biz Wiz, and once we launched Retail Ready, which is our online program, I can talk more about that in a little bit.
Yes.
I realized that one of the other big things that was missing in our industry was this perspective that founders have to build a brand that works for them. So in our industry, Kelly, there's this path, the suggested path, where it is, do your market research, find your market fit, figure out your production, find a co-packer who can make your product for you, find the right broker, find the right distributor, pay a whole bunch of money, and go national, right? And that raise some investment along the way. And that is the way to build a food business. And Kelly, that way sucks. I mean, it sucks for a lot of people. It's really, really hard.
Really
and so
challenging.
It's really challenging. And yes, of course, it works for some brands. It's worked for a lot of brands that we've worked with. But what I want people to know is that that's not the only way to build a brand. And ultimately, you got to live with whatever company you build, right? So if you want to be beholden to investors, if you want to be on the trade show circuit, if you want to do influencer marketing, if you want to do free fills and buybacks and all that stuff, that's great. But if you don't want to do it, there's also another way. So we really built Retail Ready around this idea that there is no one path to success in the industry. And the really important thing is that we've got to figure out, what is your personal definition of success, and how do we build that roadmap to get you there? So that was different too. Thank you. Thank you. I mean, I'll say it's the lesson that I learned in building my own business. I was
Absolutely.
why the heck am I doing gosh, why am I doing consulting in this way? Why am I doing retainer packages in this way? Why am I chasing somebody else's definition of success? And so once I learned that lesson for myself, I was oh, dang, we have to share the same message for our clients, that ultimately at the end of the day, you've got to build a business that works for you.
I love that. And also, too, a big takeaway just from a brand perspective is that what it sounds like is you created a signature curriculum and course, and it's retail ready. It's really clear what it is, who it's for.
Yeah.
So I think that was also, just from a brand perspective, I'm sure a powerful move of just making your methodology and all your lessons into a really cohesive experience that people can identify, okay, I want to be retail ready, so let me join this program.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kelly, that really came out of, I alluded to this, but I was doing so much one-on-one work with emerging brands, and I found a couple of things. One, 95% of my clients got stuck in the same exact points in their business.
Right.
They had 95% of the same questions.
Right.
And so I realized that. And I also realized that a lot of the younger brands, the smaller brands that I was working with, simply didn't have the money to pay tens of thousands of dollars for consultants. And I realized again, it kept coming back to this mission that I had of like impacting, like truly impacting our industry. I was like, I need to figure out how to package up my process and serve it to a greater amount of food founders, food, beverage, taxable grocery founders in a way that is really accessible for them. So we launched Retail Ready in 2016. So well before the like boom of online courses in
Wow.
2020. So yeah, we launched in 2016 and we've had, I keep saying over 2,000, but I need to go back and do the math. It's probably over 3,000 brands at this point. We've created
That's
hundreds of millions of
incredible.
dollars in revenue for our brands. I mean, it's really, really, I'm really, really proud of Retail Ready. And now it's the only way that we work with brands.
That is so cool, Alli.
Thank you.
Really, so
It
cool.
was it was pivotal, Kelly. I I remembered. Okay, so I like it was 2015 and I someone said something to me about an online course and I was like, "What's that?" Like I don't really, like what's what is that?
Right.
And I felt like I had stumbled upon a huge industry that people weren't really talking about, especially in the food industry, right? There were no
Right.
online courses when I launched Retail Ready. I mean, I don't think none that were like really on in my orbit. And I was like, this seems like the ticket for food founders. Like, why aren't we systematizing our consulting processes? Why aren't we, again, like creating community with food founders? Why aren't we creating this container that not only has the curriculum, but also has that community and has the live support from me and my team? Like it just felt like such a win. So I went all in on it. I slowly phased out all my one-on-one clients. And I was like, I'm going to go all in on this strategy. I'm going to give it a year and see if it works. And sure enough,
It did.
it did. Yeah, it worked.
Incredible. And you're
Thank
able
you.
to now say, what was that, $100 million
Oh,
in revenue?
hundreds of millions of dollars
Hundreds
in
of
revenue.
millions of dollars of
Yeah,
revenue
it's
for these
it's
founders.
wild. It's wild. I was doing the math the other day, because we hit our 9-year business anniversary. We just hit our 200th podcast episodes. I
Yes, I
hit my
saw
like
that.
1 year. I had 1 year of my coaching certification, and so I was like really reflecting on these wins that we had had, and I was like, let's talk about the financials. Like what is the like monetary impact that we have had in this industry? And we started doing the math and really looking at some of our like higher revenue generating students, brands. And very quickly, we were like, oh yeah, that's hundreds of thousands of dollars every single year. It's wild.
Wow.
I never imagined that that my team and I would have this impact.
That is so damn cool. I love
Thank
it.
you.
So
Thank you.
anyone who's listening who is
Yeah.
a food and beverage founder, they're in the early stages, they
Yeah.
want to get retail ready, they want to demystify what the process is, because I feel like there's still such a gap of how does your
Yeah.
product actually end up on a shelf, right? It still feels like this otherworldly thing. So how right? Like so
It
many
is.
people
It
perceive
is.
it like that. I hear that all the time. So
Totally.
how does someone join Retail Ready?
Yeah.
What is the process? Like, can you walk us through that so someone can get a sense of
Yeah.
what it's like?
Yeah. Kelly, it could not be easier. We want
Love
people
it.
to be able to join Retail Ready when they're ready for Retail Ready, right?
Love it.
Okay. So there are 2 ways to join. We have open enrollment all year round. You could literally join in the next 5 minutes, Kelly. You just
Love
go
it.
to our website. It's foodbizwiz.com. And we have up top, it just says Retail Ready. And there are 2 ways to find out more. You can either watch our masterclass that talks about my philosophy on growing food businesses. You'll hear me share some of the same stuff that I've shared today, this idea of building a brand that works for you. So you can either watch that masterclass and find out more about Retail Ready that way, or we have a Retail Ready right now option. You enter your email address, you read through like literally it's like 4 pages of information. And at the bottom, you can do a little self-assessment on whether or not you're the right fit. And if you are, you click on over to the enrollment page and you sign up.
Amazing. I
Yeah,
love
it's
it so
easy.
much. And also really admire how you built your business.
Thank you.
You're
Thank you.
welcome.
Kelly, I do want to say something that's really important here. It feels important to share. I've had a lot of ups and downs too, right? Like you're getting the highlight reel on the
Right, right,
podcast,
right.
but there were months, years, gosh, where we had to fix problems in the business and navigate challenges that we had. I've had to hire and fire team members. We've had to really figure out the best delivery of Retail Ready and how we support students.
Mm.
We've had to navigate cash flow challenges. Gosh, I lost like $30,000 in Facebook ads in 2022. Like that almost tanked my business savings. Like it was so, there are like big ups and downs. And like now we're at the point where things are feeling like really good, but it
Right.
took, you know, there's challenges along the way as
Well, I
well.
really appreciate you sharing that because I think that so many people put a lot of pressure on themselves. I'll raise both
Yeah.
my hands
Yep.
of nailing it the first time around. And, wherever you are, I think as an entrepreneur, you wish you were 5 steps ahead. It's really
Totally.
hard to just own where you are right now.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you saying that because I know that that probably gave someone permission to be okay with where they are, but
Yeah.
knowing that they could find a better path, like what you just said, of building a brand that really works for you,
Yeah.
that it does take some trial and error, it does take some highs and lows, and it does take time to find what truly
Totally.
works.
Totally. And I have a lot of like service providers who reach out to me and ask my advice on building courses or working, building consulting businesses and things like that. And so often I see that they're comparing my year 9 to their year 1,
Right.
which is totally not fair. And I see food founders do this too, Kelly. We have folks in Retail Ready who have been in business, gosh, 10 years, 20 years. We have a brand in there who's literally 100 years old. And they
Wow.
sent, yeah, Acme Fish Company. And we also have H&H Bagel, which is an old brand, right? And so
Wow.
we have these older brands who send newer team members through Retail Ready to get them up to speed, or they realize like, hey, we're 100 years old and maybe the techniques we used 20 years ago aren't so relevant in the industry anymore. But Kelly, my point is we've got Retail Ready students who come in month 1 of their business, year 1 of their business, and they
Right.
look at someone who's in year 10, multi-million-dollar business, right? And it's really easy to compare, right? To compare and
Right.
despair when you look at a brand or a business that is ahead of you. And I think it's really important to remember that we don't know what is going on behind the scenes in someone else's business, especially
Totally.
with food founders, right? Like you see that nut butter who's on the shelves at all of, Whole Foods Global, or you see that like CBD beverage that like came out of nowhere and is
Mhm.
all over the place. But we don't know if they're profitable. We don't know if the
Right.
founder takes off nights and weekends. We don't know if
Right.
they are like, crying themselves to sleep every night. Like we have no idea what's going on in their business. And I think it's really, really important to just remember that we don't know what's going on in business.
I think that's a great, valid, important part.
Yeah.
Would there be any other piece of advice for a new food and beverage founder? Because this is more so for emerging brands. Anything
Yeah.
else that you would leave them with?
Yeah, I've got one, and this is an aha moment that folks have when they join us in Retail Ready. If I could like shout this from the rooftop, I would. It is, as you are trying to get your product on retail store shelves, you need to realize the real reason why a grocery buyer says yes to your product line. And it's not because you're delicious. It's not because you're sustainable. It's not because you are a minority owned founder. It's not because you're local. It is none of those things. All those things are icing on the cake. But the real reason why buyers bring in products for their shelves is to help them meet their category goals. So Kelly, those category
Mm.
goals are 99% of the time related to financials. So it's to increase revenue or increase margin. And so often I see brands starting their wholesale pitches with, like, hey, I'm Kelly and I make the most delicious granola. And
Right.
when I was a grocery buyer and I would hear a founder start their pitch, I'd roll my eyes in the back of my head and I would think like, yeah, Kelly, you and everybody else who pitched to
Right.
me this
Right.
week, right?
No,
And
fair.
so, yeah, so I really want founders to flip that, right? And talk about what your product does for that buyer that helps them meet their category goals. And then, yes, of course, like the taste and the deliciousness and the values align, like sustainability, like all of that keeps consumers coming back again and again. But ultimately, that buyer has to trust that your product is going to help them have high sales in your category.
What a way to end the podcast. I think that was such a great takeaway and really impactful to help someone reshift. I think that's also could be implemented for whatever type of brand you're building.
Okay.
Just looking from that perspective is a huge game changer. So thank
Yeah,
you so much for sharing that. That's
my
I just
pleasure.
wrote it down. It will be in the show notes, everyone. Don't worry. Um, Alli, where can people go? You said foodbizwiz.com to
Yep,
enroll.
foodbizwiz.com, and Wiz is W-I-Z, no H in there. So foodbizwiz.com. And then I hang out on Instagram. I'm at It's
I
Alli
love it.
Ball. That's where I'm most active. If anybody's listening and we're not connected yet, please send me a DM. I would love to follow you back and get to know your brand over there
I
as
love
well.
it. And I highly recommend everyone following Alli. She shares awesome content all the time and listen to her podcast. It's one of the podcasts that I really do binge and I'll play it while I'm working. And I always hear really great nuggets and great conversations. So thank you
Thanks,
again for
Kelly.
coming on. This was definitely a goal of mine to have you on. And I really appreciate your time and insight.
Thanks for having me, Kelly.
You're so welcome. And I'll see everyone on the next episode.